Namaste and greetings. I, Priyanka Negi, a researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the fifth day of understanding the nuances of climate change in the Indian subcontinent, impact and way forward, an online international monsoon school program, a 6-week immersive online introductory certificate training course. This program is organized by IMPRI, Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development. The conveners for the program from IMPRI are Dr. Simi Mehta and Dr. Arjun Kumar. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Our theme for day 5 is Alternative Energy Solutions. Sessions for today include India's Transition and Journey to Cleaner Energy by Dr. Aditya Gusain ji, The Current State of Play of Energy Transition in India by Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy ji. Now, without any further ado, let us start the program. For our first session today, I am delighted to invite Dr. Aditya Gusain ji, Principal Environmental Specialist, Environmental Management Center, Mumbai. Dr. Aditya Gusain ji's topic for this session is India's Transition Journey to Cleaner Energy. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Very much excited for this session. So I'll just share my screen. I have a presentation and maybe we'll just have a discussion while having the presentation itself. So just let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes,
Yes,
perfect.
sir.
Perfect.
Yeah. So so the topic for my this session is on India's transition journey to clean energy. And before going through the presentation itself, I mean, it's a very broad topic. And before going through the presentation itself, I just wanted to have some kind of interactive session with my audience. And I will just, I'm trying, just a sec, some issues there. It's just a sec. I'll just reshare. It's not, the slides are not moving. I'll just reshare.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just request the audience if they can just go to this link. I'll just paste this link on the chat box so that you can just go to this link and we'll just have some questions around it. I'll just copy this link on chat for you, or you can even use this QR code to basically log into the link. So either you can just use that link, or you can just use the QR code. So I'll just copy that in chat box. Please let me know if you are able to sign into the link. So can anyone confirm they are able to sign into the link?
Yes.
Are the people, attendees are able to do that? I mean, they can either go to this link and use this code, or they can just scan this QR code and then directly go into that link itself.
So it's okay from the participants as well. Nandini
Okay.
Srivastav ji has confirmed.
Okay, sure. So I'll do one thing. I'll just share my entire screen. Yeah. Okay. So are you able to see the first question? Okay. Great, great, great. You are able to see my screen, right? Uh,
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
mean, the interface of the web portal, I mean, the web browser. Okay, so we have 12 responses so far. People from with background in biology, environment, law, politics, nutrition, information, design, economics, researcher. Okay, okay. So 7 people have responded so far. So how many participants are there in total?
So we have 27 as of yet. Some are still joining, have asked to reshare the link. I have reshared. So
Okay.
there must be more coming in.
Also share the code, Priyanka. Or
Yeah.
the
I'll
code
just I'll just do one.
mentioned on the screen 35359283.
Yeah. Yeah. So people are able to see this link, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think I have received over 14 responses so far. I mean, 14 people have responded so far. Okay, so one school, grade 11. Okay, school students are also there. Okay, great, great. MBA, law, great. So I'll just move on to next question. So yeah, so have you came across, I mean, anytime this term of transition energy? So what word or concept or any term comes to your mind when you hear about transition energy? Hydropower, great. Sustainable green, good, yeah. Climate change, nice. Clean energy, okay. Moving to sustainable, okay. Alternate power, okay. Planet friendly, great. Few more responses. Okay. Energy transformation, nice. Low carbon emissions, awesome. So yeah, intergenerational equity, okay. Shutting down fossil fuel, good. Okay. Green economy, yeah. So many people have basically talked about sustainable, I mean, sustainable development or sustainability. The concept of sustainability comes into their mind when you hear about transition energy. It's good that many people have already acquainted with this terminology and what are the key associated concepts uh, associated with this transition energy. So yeah, I'll just move on to the next. So, when I talk about this transition energy, I mean, so this transition to a clean energy, as you guys have already suggested. So, what do you think? Which all sectors in Indian economy are basically are being impacted by this transition when we switch to uh, cleaner fuel, cleaner sources of energy? Yeah, public transport, okay. Manufacturing, agriculture, great. Okay, power, okay. Industrial sector, okay. Mining sector. Okay. Agriculture. So agriculture has come up. I mean, many people have uh, taken up agriculture as the most impacted sector. Coal, energy, right? Labor. Yeah, so great. I mean, someone has taken the social concept or social dimension into account when they're talking about transition to clean energy. That's good. So one or two more responses, then I'll just start with my presentation. Then we'll again come back to this particular link later on. Yeah, great, great. So as per you, coal has been a major sector. I mean, basically the power sector or the power generation sector is the sector which is being impacted by the transition to a cleaner or greener fuel or greener source of energy. So coming to the contents of my presentation. So this will be the flow of the presentation. I'll start with a small background, some energy landscape description on all energy landscape of India. Then what are the current government initiatives and policies that are being followed under different sources of renewable energy, and what are the key challenges that are faced during India's transition journey from a high carbon dependent energy sources to a cleaner fuel or a greener fuel. What is the future outlook, or what are the key benefits that are associated with this transition journey? Because there will be some risks, there will be some opportunities that will be associated with the this transition journey, and especially for a country like India, which is booming in terms of expansion of its growth, which is experiencing a significant exponential growth in terms of development and in terms of manufacturing and in terms of generation of renewable sources of energy. And I mean, India is expanding. So everything that I'll try to curtail down in a PPT in few of the slides. So yeah. So coming to the background, so when I talk about the transition journey or transition in energy sector, so why that is actually needed. So major driving force when we talk about transition to a cleaner fuel, the first thing that comes into our mind is increasing or rising your GHG emissions. So when we talk about GHG emissions, mostly we are concerned with the rising concentration of CO2. And when we compare the global scenario of GHG emissions across the globe, so when we see that power sector in last 4 years is experiencing or is accounting for majority of the emissions, GHG emission, when we talk about across the total accumulated emissions across the emissions across the globe, followed by your industry and transportation sector, and then your residential and your buildings, etc. However, your primary driver or the primary GHG emission source is power sector from a very long time and is being a major source in, I mean, in near past. So it's very important to basically address what are the major drivers which are influencing this increased GHG emissions. So coming to understanding what is the global emission scenario in the recent or the in the recent past. So global energy related CO2 emission, when we talk about, it grew by 0.9% or 321 megaton in 2022 itself, reaching a new height. I mean, so even though we are switching to a cleaner fuel, but our initiatives are not ample enough to basically curtail down or reduce the emissions which are associated with other activities that are dependent on a transition journey. So your power sector, energy sector remain to be your biggest sectoral increase in the last year, last FY 22-23, and majority of which came from electricity and heat generation. As you have said that energy sector or your energy, coal and fuel basically is driving your power generation and heat generation across many of the countries. So if we want to attain a cleaner or a significant reduction in near future or by 2050, because majority of the global, I mean, majority of the countries across the globe, over 31 countries have committed to curtail down their emissions to achieve their net zero targets by 2050. So when we talk about this reduction in GHG emission, and so uh, to basically reduce, to curtail down or to restrict the temperature below 2 degrees a lot of, I mean, a 50% reduction has to be achieved by 2030 to restrict it below 2 degree, that is up to 1.5 degree. So it's a very stringent target that many of the countries have set. But I mean, I won't go into detail of what energy transition is, but as you already guys have mentioned that for you, the transition is from a cleaner, I mean, from a very high carbon dependent to a low carbon energy source. So this transition from high to low energy consumption, or low carbon energy consumption, is basically an energy transition. It has not occurred abruptly. The transformation have happened along the temporal period, over a long period of time, because there was group of energy sources which are prominent in one particular period, and now because of certain environmental implication or its availability, so its market demand have reduced and people are trying to look for alternatives. So that's why this transition is very much crucial to basically achieve a cleaner or a better environment. So global need for transitioning to clean energy has become urgent because of a combination of environmental, economic, and social factors, as you suggested. That involves basically shifting away from your conventional sources of energy, coal, oil, and natural gas, to a cleaner mode that you have already suggested. For example, your hydro, solar, wind power, and etc. So when I talk about green energy, so green energy is nothing but energy which is derived from your renewables. So it is also known as your green, sustainable, clean, or sources of energy. And since the amount of direct emission is minimal or negligible in case of green energy, so that's why it is very much desirable to have such sources of energy for generation of any heat and electricity, or any other usage in other sectors such as industry, agriculture, mining, that we have listed, which might be impacted due to the transition journey. So why this transition is actually needed? So these are the major drivers that I've tried to list down. That your climate change is one of the major drivers, as we already have discussed, that rising GHG emissions, your CO2, your methane, your HFC, CFC. So increasing emissions of these gases or GHGs have resulted into drastic climatic impacts in terms of changes in temperature, precipitation, sea level rise, and many associated climatic physical impacts that are happening because of the past emissions that are there in the atmosphere post your industrialization period. So that's why it is very important to basically reduce the impact of the past emissions, and to basically prevent the future emission going into the atmosphere and causing even more damage, or accelerating the damage even to a greater extent. So that's why this is one of the major drivers. So the second major driver is your energy access or your energy security. So that is also an important aspect, because in recent times, you might have seen that any geopolitical tension that happens across the globe, be it between the countries. So if any particular country or if any particular region is dependent on is relying on other sources of energy that it imports from any other country or region, so any geopolitical tension results into limited access to that particular energy source, and it also results into several other consequences. I mean, it have a cascading effect in other industries which are dependent on that source of energy. So energy security and your access to energy is also another challenge or a reason or driver to basically us to move to a cleaner source of energy. Even when we talk about country like India, there are many locations or many places across the country or across the globe where supply of electricity or power through the conventional sources of energy is not possible. So we have to look for certain energy sources or energy generation sources which can be decentralized within those isolated or secluded locations, so that they don't have to rely on the grid electricity for the development of that particular area. And then again, your air quality, your health, human health is another major driver that basically pushes the governments to basically transition to a cleaner source of energy. Yeah. So when I talk about impacts of energy transition, so energy transition, as I already mentioned, your international security, because many times this energy distribution and energy generation. So control is there with few of the countries, and it have certain impacts in terms of prices of that energy source and availability of that energy source. Also, your socioeconomic development is also hampered because your other sectors, crucial sectors, are dependent on that energy source. So it's very important that any transition journey will be impacted by the will be impacted by the socioeconomic development or the changes in the energy source. So regional integration, environmental factors, so everything are interlinked when we talk about the transition journey in terms of energy sector. When it comes to the energy landscape in India, so in India, India has been a major user of coal and oil and natural gas, for as a major source of energy. So when I talk about the Indian emission scenario, so power sector, it's a similar image that we saw in, it's very similar to what the global picture is. So India is also experiencing a very high contribution of CO2 emissions from the power sector, where coal-fired plants are the major contributor to it. So, since India's dependency on coal is very high, so it's very important for a country like India to look for other alternative sources which don't have uh, so much environmental or economic or some social issues associated with that. So when we see India's journey over last few years, last 10, 20 years or last 2 decades, so we have seen that the energy, if you see the first figure on the top left, so it basically shows the total primary energy demand in India that have changed from 2000 to 2020s, and you are able to see that coal is somewhat similar, but however, in terms of other sources of energy, we are trying to increase the capacity or the uh, energy sources of from renewables. We are not entirely now dependent on the conventional sources of energy. We are trying to look for any other modern sources of renewables for this particular source. So India has tripled. India's energy demand have tripled over last 3 decades, especially, for renewables. However, your coal and your oil are still being a dominant source of energy. There are certain reasons associated with that, because India still is in the stage of basically developing the infrastructure which is required to sustain or synergize this new source of energy into the current existing grid energy electricity system. Yeah. So when it comes to the power sector capacity addition, so you can see that in terms of solar, India is, it's showing an increasing trend in terms of solar addition, capacity addition. So this is a major transition that we have experienced over last few years for India in terms of renewable. So at this particular slide, I skip because as I already mentioned that our high dependency on coal, 60% of total electricity that we generate is basically coming from our coal-based emission, coal-based or coal-fired power plants. When we talk about the total energy scenario, when it, however, over the last few years, we have also seen a huge investment in terms of renewables. So this investment is not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector itself. We have experienced a huge investment trend in renewables over the last few years. So because of the policies and the incentives that are associated for transitioning to a cleaner energy. So this is the current mix. If I talk about India's current energy mix in 2022, so still 50% of that, is coming from coal. And however, this situation is when I talk about energy mix within the renewable itself. So in the renewable itself, solar and your hydro are the two major or explore sources of energy which India is using judicially across the entire country. However, these renewable sources still have certain limitations. However, the private sector and the research institutions and the academics are still trying to, I mean, reduce the gap that is there between the conventional and renewable sources of energy. So this energy mix, so the major objective of this transition journey is to change the picture of this energy mix in the coming years, so as to help the country's target, which are there to achieve our country's net zero emissions. So this is only another picture, that is how your renewable sources or installed capacity have changed over the years. I'll just skip through that slide. So coming to the government's initiatives and policies over the last few years. So government have been, I mean, as you might have came across many instances where uh, uh, so many initiatives or schemes have been launched. So I'll just go one by one, and I'll just skip through many of those schemes. But I just wanted to know that there are certain commitments which are there, which have been made across the international forums, so as to achieve India's net zero target. So in 2021 itself, in COP26 in Glasgow, so our Prime Minister basically announced a major uh, commitment towards India's on behalf of the country, that India will be achieving its net zero target. So when I talk about net zero, so many people might be thinking what exactly net zero is. So when I talk about net zero, is it's the concept when the amount of GHG emissions that are going into the system. So the same amount of system are are being sequestered out of that system, and I mean have been taken out are being taken out from that system, so as to maintain the balance of the input and the output of GHG emissions across the climatic system. So India have committed its net zero target by 2070, in comparison to many of the countries which are targeting it much earlier by 2050s. Along with that, four other major commitments that happened. Yeah, I think I have one question. Uh, what kind of solar projects can be implemented which won't require as much as land as we see? Okay, as I presented for the last session, my question is, are there other models of solar that can be implemented that aren't as land intensive, and how much of? Okay, so yeah, so this is a very good question. So this one of the major constraints with solar is that land requirement, as we already mentioned, that land requirement is a major challenge in that. So there are initiatives. I mean, people are taking initiatives uh, to basically develop that, instead of aerial, some kind of uh, vertical solar panels, or I mean, such kind of initiatives or different kind of approach can be taken. But yeah, even I have to check for any such kind of initiative. But yes, this is a major challenge, especially for a country like India, where solar is a very good potential source of energy, but land is a major challenge in that. So yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure whether any pilot study has been conducted so far. I mean, I need to verify that, but yeah, it's a very relevant question, that land requirement is a challenge in India, especially for having for harnessing large solar energy out of that. Yeah. So yeah. So India's long-term energy to reach net zero by 2070. So these are some of the initiatives that India will be having. These are some of the initiatives that India will be having to achieve its net zero target. So it includes everything related to your enhancing of energy efficiency, land soil management, renewable energy addition, uh, electrification of or modernization of fleet, use of green hydrogen in industry, use of bioenergy, changing building codes. I mean, basically promoting development of real estate which are aligned with net zero carbon targets, or greening the heavy industry. So these are so so phase-wise transition is very much crucial for a country like India, which is expansionally growing in terms of its GDP in different sectors. So yeah, so this is India's net zero target. I mean, this is the representation of India's net zero target. And when I talk about the key initiatives that are happening to achieve this target, so India is very much uh, taking initiatives to reduce its dependency on coal and enhance energy security to curtail down the emissions. So, as already we know that in the commitments, so India have committed to achieve installed capacity of over 500 gigawatts by 2030 itself, and achieve its carbon neutrality, or basically net zero neutrality, by 2070. When it comes to other initiatives such as National Action Plan on Climate Change, reducing carbon intensity of economy by 45%. So several initiatives or missions have been launched under NAPCC, your National Action Plan on Climate Change, such as National Solar Mission, National Hydrogen Policy. So different initiatives have been taken by government to curtail down the emissions, and to basically uh, successfully transition to a low carbon economy. So some of the major steps that have happened in recent years for achieving this target. So government have permitted foreign direct investment up to 100% for renewable energy projects. So not only that, so several as already it having, so several ultra mega renewable energy parks, so waiver on interstate transition system. So several initiatives are ongoing to basically attract the private partners into in basically, or attracting the other global agencies to basically partner with on renewable energy projects in India. Not only that, transmission plan for uh, integration of this 500 gigawatt renewable energy capacity by 2030, setting up of different development cells and facilitating investments, standardizing the bidding guidelines for tariff for basically for procurement of power from grid connected solar PVs and wind projects. So many schemes have been implemented in order to achieve our initiatives to clean energy. So one of them is Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, that we know as UDAY, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, that basically is associated with improving the lifestyle of people which are dependent on your biomass or as a cooking fuel. So switching to a cleaner fuel energy help to will help the rural community to enhance their lifestyle or health associated with the uh, emissions that are happening because of burning of fossil fuel. So then even your electrification of or the modernization of fleet to electric e-vehicles or electric vehicles through your FAME scheme, basically faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. So this have, I mean, in India itself, an exponential growth have been observed, especially in last, I mean, I think in last 5-6 years, if you see that the number of e-vehicles on road have basically significantly increased in India. And then your Atal Jyoti Yojana for solar, basically promoting the use of solar lighting in rural areas. Then your PM Kusum scheme for in basically providing farmers financial and water security by harnessing solar energy capacity by 2022. And apart from that, many portals or many data portals and alliances have been formulated. One of the major alliance that India led basically International Solar Alliance, which have headquarters in Gurugram, with having more than 120 countries which are associated with this in this alliance for promoting the use of solar energy globally. So India have taken many key initiatives in this particular domain. Also, recently this year itself, climate and energy dashboard was launched by Niti Aayog, and this particular dashboard is a very good repository for which have the data related to energy or climate and environment sector. I mean, different sectors or even economic and socio-economic data is also there within this particular dashboard. So I'll request everyone just to go through this dashboard. I'll share this PPT and you can just go through that link and explore the dashboard, because the repository is very huge, and it's very good to basically see what kind of data is there. Then coming to the major schemes that are that have been announced in this year's budget itself, related to your green hydrogen mission, your allocation of fund for energy towards energy for projects which are towards energy transition and net zero objective. So apart from that, investment of more than 20,000 crore have been allocated for strengthening the interstate transmission system, for grid integration, for, I mean, of 13 renewable energy projects from Ladakh. So many initiatives and schemes have been formulated. Even the green credit program notification that came in this aspect to basically enhance the emission, I mean, to reduce or to basically I just don't I just forgot that term, but yeah. So this green emission, basically the emission trading scheme, have been formulated. I mean, have been proposed to basically address the challenges which are there associated with the increased emission or to offset those emissions. So yeah, and apart from that, other schemes such as your waste to health, promotion of your waste to health plants, or your biomass and bioenergy plants. So schemes have been, or the funding have been allocated uh, to basically support use of transition, use of basically to support use of cleaner or greener sources of energy. So I'll just skip through certain slides, because these are some of the key highlights which have occurred in last few years. I mean, last past 2-3 years in areas of solar energy, where India have already, I mean, is a major international solar mission is ongoing. Basically, an initiative that was taken in under this National Action Plan on Climate Change. So, I mean, even government have approved more than 57 solar parks in India, with having a capacity of, I mean, 39.28 gigawatts. I mean, still we are far to go, but in constantly India is taking, I mean, the government is taking a lot of initiatives to basically promote usage of renewable sources of energy. Likewise, in wind, there are certain, I mean, I'll just skip through these facts. You can just go through these facts in detail after this session. I mean, yeah. So I'll just directly jump to what are the key challenges when it comes to India's transition journey. So first one is high reliance on imported energy or fuels. So as I already mentioned, that India is still very much dependent on crude oil and imported coal for power generation. Many coal-fired plants use imported coal. I mean, because of better efficiency and lower air emissions of certain air pollutants. So India is still very much reliant on import of these conventional sources of energy, which accounts for, I mean, a huge capita from the country's account. I mean, so also, as we already discussed, that India's energy security is very much reliant on this particular imports of fuel and energy, because in occurrence of any disruption in this global supply chain due to any geopolitical tension, it basically exacerbate the situation, and it deteriorates in terms of the development that is associated with other sectors which are highly reliant on your imported sources of fuel and energy. Then there are certain energy technological restrictions or limitations not even just technological, but certain constraints that are associated with certain renewable sources also, that uh, still India as a country, we are exploring the manufacturing industry for developing the certain components or machinery which are required for installation of your renewable sources. I mean, renewable for generation of renewable source of energy. So still we are very much dependent on technology for on many other countries, and this basically is another major challenge which restricts the expansion of renewable energy, or uh, I mean, so that's why it basically hinders the smooth transition to, or a very significant transition to cleaner source of energy. So technological in limitation is another major challenge which restricts that. Then the limited infrastructure, including a power systems and integration, because uh, so once we have our renewable, but in case of um, a limited infrastructure to basically synchronize or synergize the electricity generated from conventional sources and renewable, still we still lack that infrastructure in uh, in in the amount which is required to sustain the energy demand within the country. So it's another challenge when we talk about in India's transition journey. Then there are certain sectors which we call hard to abate sectors, where uh, how much we try, even if we try to reduce the emissions to the, I mean, the maximum amount of emission that we try can reduce, certain amount of emissions will still be there. So there are certain hard to abate sectors where removal of certain amount of emissions from those sectoral processes is very difficult. So India is still yet to explore through research and development and technological advances to basically to develop methodologies to reduce that amount of emissions from those particular sectors. Then electrification of the entire transportation sector, because we have seen that at present, most of the alternatives that we have for transportation sector is for light duty vehicles. But when we talk about heavy duty vehicles, there are very few sources we have for transitioning to a cleaner fuel. When we talk about the aviation sector or the shipping sector, still they are very much dependent on a different kind of fuel, which is, I mean, still we are very much technologically, I mean, we have not achieved any technological advancement in developing a fuel alternative for these sectors. So still many sectors are there which yet to explore alternatives for their transition. Then ultimately your impacts of climate change itself. I mean, though we are trying to we are basically going through this transition journey to mitigate the impacts of climate change, but the climatic impacts that are there because of the past emissions that we have contributed to the environmental system. So because of that, due to those impacts, this uh, this process of transition journey also get hampered because of the direct impact on fuel supply, energy demand due to the heat waves or the changes in temperature or any external stress that are happening because of the climatic issues that are already being there. So climatic the impacts of climate change or the physical hazard that are happening because of that, that is also contributing to that is also being a major challenge when we talk about India's transition journey. So when I talk about the future outlook for India's transition journey, so I mean, uh, so India's transition journey is very much dependent on, um, I mean, the government has already taking many initiatives to curtail down the challenges that are there associated with this transition. But women empowerment and reducing this gender divide is very much important to basically uh, not just to have a transition to a low carbon economy from a high carbon dependent economy, but the transition should be just. It should not be that it is it should not be that it is not favorable to certain sect or certain people, certain set of people across the country. I mean, it should be just and equitable for everyone. So that's why this transition journey has to be the policies have to be framed in such a manner that it takes into account the larger, broader picture while thinking of the challenges. Then expansion and promotion of clean energy supply chain. So supply chain, the entire supply chain has to be, managed, not just a few uh, points, but the entire supply chain has to be undergo should be undergoing the entire process of transition journey. Foster university level intervention to assist country in pursuing economically feasible energy transition. So, so always there is a disconnect between industry and the academia. So it's very important to basically bridge that gap so technological advances or technological solutions can be developed. I mean, with at the very because there's always a gap between the scientific community and the technological requirement. So it's very, the industrial requirement. So it's very much important to bridge that gap to identify solutions which are effectively not just in terms of its theoretical setup, but also in its practical implementation. Expansion and promotion of use of public transportation, strengthening their emission standard. So all these are the few, all these things are happening in place and will be changing based on the transition journey that India is already setting up, or the roadmap that India is already going on, supporting India's manufacturing capacity and technological superiority. So basically, Make in India and supporting India's manufacturing capacity will ensure our, self dependency for generating components or for developing certain, for developing infrastructure within the country itself. So we don't have to rely on other other countries to support us in the transition journey. When we talk about the benefits which are associated with this transition, so we already are much aware that economic benefits are there because it, I mean, for transitioning by 20, to achieve a climate neutrality by 2070, it might be helpful to boost up our GDP by up to 4.7% by 2036 and creating more than 15 million new jobs by 2047. This not just the economic benefits, but with the environmental benefits as well, in terms of reduction of air pollution, your GHG emissions. As I already mentioned, that job creation is one of the major positive opportunity that we can get out of this transition journey, because investing in this energy transition would create 3 times more jobs than the similar investment that we make in the fossil fuels. Enhance energy security and reliance on fossil fuel imports. Transform India's more self-sufficient green economy and global competitive export hub. So we don't have, this energy transition is very much required for a country like India to reduce our reliance on other countries for energy sources, which drives our economy. So, and moreover that this transition journey to cleaner fuel will help us to basically decouple the emissions from our economic growth, because the only issue with conventional sources of energy is that with the economic growth, the emissions which are associated with the use of conventional sources are directly correlated with, are highly correlated to each other. So it's very important to decouple or decorrelate these two things by switching to a cleaner sources of energy, and then to foster a just transition, labor and social protection policies will be another benefit that will come out of our transition journey. So this is the short, this is a presentation that I wanted to uh, have with you guys. So yeah, so I have one or two more questions. Panel waste is also becoming an issue now. Any comments on that? Just like plastic was consumed many years ago. Okay. The use of urea, heavy duty layering. Okay. So use of urea in BS6 and heavy duty vehicles making an impact in lowering pollution rate. Okay. So coming to these two questions, the first is panel waste. So waste management is a very crucial aspect when we talk about climate mitigation itself, because um, if we talk about any renewable source of energy, so yeah, waste management is always an issue. So when I talk about the opportunities that are there with this transition journey, so this is one of the opportunity that people can think of, that management of the waste which is generated from these renewables. So but after that, we are just looking for the direct, when we talk about transition journey at present moment, um, many people are just thinking about the direct implication of those initiatives. We have, I mean, the opportunity underlies from the indirect uh, impacts uh, which are there. So, so waste management is one of the solution. I mean, so yeah, any comments on that? Yeah. Is the use, so for this particular thing, the use of urea in BS6 engine. So I think I'm not sure about BS6. I mean the use of urea, but many things are happening. Even I think in this year itself, uh, I think Nitin Gadkari ji, I mean, was launching uh, and I think it's with Tata, I guess. They're launching a vehicle which will entirely run on ethanol. So yeah, so I think many initiatives are already being taken to um, switch to a cleaner fuel for light duty vehicles, especially for four-wheelers and two-wheelers. For heavy-duty vehicles, it's still a challenge, as I already mentioned. But yes, uh, they, I mean, there will be certain implication and environmental implication of usage of uh, use of different sources. However, when we always try to look for alternative sources, we try to trade off between your environmental implication and economic issue. So it's both ways. So you have to balance your economics with your environmental implication. So yes, so there will be certain environmental implication. However, in comparison to its alternative, it will be much lesser. So yes. So I have few more questions. So if you guys have few, uh, so I so I have time, right? For 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can go to the Mentimeter again. So people are with me. I mean, you're able to access that. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, okay, great, great, great. Okay, so 6 people have responded so far. I see 38 participants in total. Um, yeah, I'm expecting few more responses. Okay. So is it possible for anyone to just give me an idea? I mean, yes, it is not the same carbon neutrality and net zero, but can anyone tell me? I mean, that what's the difference between net zero and carbon neutrality? I mean, how these two are different concepts. You can put that in chat box also. I can just go through that.
Participants can raise their hand as well and can unmute and answer.
Okay, so 10 people have responded so far. think I have one more question. As India have already. Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about transfer of climate technology, I mean, many multilateral agencies or uh, institutions are basically uh, I mean, are basically providing, I mean, acting as a bridge to basically eh, uh, to ensure this successful transmission of technology from for effective reduction of for effective reduction of GHG emission in different sectors. And yes, there are certain challenges in terms of finances, but there are multilateral institutions that are providing climate finance on those things. So yes, so challenges are there, but I mean, I already discussed. So the whatever challenges in terms of international collaboration or in terms of um, uh, basically identifying the funding sources. So these will persist. However, India now have, is is not now depending much on other countries for developing or developing those technologies. So now the major push that we are getting from the government itself is to develop the indigenous solutions within the country itself under Make in India. So, as you can see, many new startups and many companies are now now have come up in this particular domain of providing technological solutions for this renewables and cleaner sources of energy. So, I mean, being in a consulting firm, I have seen many new startups that are coming into this particular domain and basically are exploring. And so, a lot of opportunities are there when we talk about development of technology. Yeah. So, even many institutions, academic institutions, are now partnering with the industry to develop solutions at the indigenous scale. Yeah.
So regarding your net zero versus carbon neutrality questions, we have the answers in chat box by a couple of participants.
Yeah.
So Aditya ji has answered that net zero is related to GHG and carbon neutral is related to only carbon emission.
Yes.
And yes, we have more answers coming in, so you could read in the chat box.
Yes, I can just, yeah. So great people have answered to that question. I'll just move on to the next question now. So, as per you, what are the key benefits? I mean, I listed down a few, but you can just let me know if any. I'll just move back to the question. If uh, any more benefits you can see associated with this transition to low carbon economy, especially in energy sector. You can just type out your responses. Yeah, energy security, great. Reduce air pollution, better air quality, self-dependence. Yes. Close on. Yes. Okay. Less expensive. Okay. Yeah. So when we talk about renewable, so in short term, it might be the transition journey or the risk associated with this transition to a low carbon economy. The economics will be very, I mean, it might not be that uh, cheap in comparison to this conventional alternative. However, in longer term, definitely it will be, I mean, this this divide between the economy, it will basically reduce over the years. So this transition risk will reduce over the years when we talk about changing to low carbon economy. Jobs in environment tech. Yeah, definitely. Yes, great, great, great. So, I mean, this is the same question that energy transition to. I hope you guys will answer this. So energy transition to cleaner sources can pose both risk and opportunities. So I I assume that you guys know the response to this particular question after this PPT. I mean, okay, so one false we have. Okay. So if anyone doesn't agree with this statement, so can you okay. So Mohammed Shamshad Parvez. Yes. So can you provide me some example or any context? I mean, if you feel that risks and opportunities are not there, I mean, both are not there with this energy transition. So we can just put that in chat box. It's fine. So, I mean, as I already discussed that there will be certain risks as well, certain opportunities also will be there when we move to this move across this transition journey. I'll just go to the next question. So, how relevant the following statements are important for fostering India's transition journey to clean energy? So, you can just scale from 1 to 5 that when we talk about allocating greater climate finance to climate mitigation projects, I mean, capacity building of stakeholders to switch to cleaner fuel, incentivization of cleaner based energy based products and services, collaboration between academy and industries on research and development activities, developing inclusive climate strategies to reduce emissions at all levels. So you can just scale from 1 to 5. How relevant do you think these points are? Okay, I have received one response. Few more responses. Because
So in the meanwhile, Sakshi ji has a question.
yes,
Sakshi ji, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
okay. So what kind of risk are there? So it's a very good question because I was curious that no one is asking because we generally see transition journey as an opportunity for us, but there'll be certain risks associated with that. So the first risk is related to um, I mean, there are different transitions. So one I can talk about is if I talk about corporates. So for corporates, I mean, switching to a cleaner fuel will have some cost associated with it. So that cost for a company or an industry will be an additional financial burden to that particular company. So cost of this decarbonization or transition to low carbon will pose an additional cost. So that is a risk to the company. I mean, though the final output or the final implication will be GHG reduction from the company or the contribution of the company. However, in terms of its financial implication, it will be posing a risk to the company. Other than that, there will be some reputation related risks. So suppose India have committed to net zero targets. So we have committed to net zero targets. And suppose we are not taking that many initiatives in terms of reducing our emissions. So it will have certain reputational risk which will tarnish India's image and it will ultimately hamper India's image in procuring climate-related finance or fund from international agencies or international banks. Because because if we don't uh, if we don't progress on the path which we have committed, it will have a negative impact in the financial institutions that basically provide funding for climate-related projects. So, so likewise, there are multiple risks which are associated with this transition journey. So, so that's why in the previous slide I mentioned that apart from having opportunities, we will definitely have certain risks associated with this transition to a cleaner fuel. So I hope I have answered this particular question. Yeah. So great. I'll just move on to quickly to the next slide. So, so this is a very open-ended question. I'll just skip through that. So yeah. So coming to the last question that I just wanted to know that many new terms and many new concepts. I mean, I've not gone in depth with every concept. I just bombarded few concepts and few technical terms over here. But I just wanted to the objective of this presentation was to basically make you acquainted with ongoing uh, ongoing challenges or ongoing issues in this transition journey, especially in a country like India where we are exponentially growing and we have committed a lot to reduce our emissions. So any key learning or any new concept or any new terminology that you came across through this presentation, you can just put all those things in this particular thing. Just transition, gender divide, great. I mean, just transition itself is a very broad topic. So it's a very good thing that you people can look across in this particular topic, just transition. So a few more responses, then I'll end my presentation from my end. Okay, so I think yeah. So if people have more questions, so uh, in so if you guys have any more questions, you can always feel free to contact me. So so this is our company's website and my email ID. So I mean, you can just always explore our website and you can mail me in case of any query, or if you have any issue with the presentation or you had any questions which are unanswered. So you can just mail me those questions or you can connect with me over LinkedIn. So yeah, so I'll just share, I'll stop sharing my screen now and I'll be sharing this PPT with the team. So you can circulate among the participants. So in case of any queries or any questions or any suggestions or any comments, you can always feel free to connect. Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was a very informative session and very interactive as well. Thank you so much. Uh, we look forward to having you at the IMPRI Web Policy Talk in the future as well. Once again, thank you so much for your session, sir. Uh, our second session of the day is on the current state of play of energy transition in India by Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy ji. Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy ji is CEO, Vasudha Foundation India, New Delhi. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all of you. The previous speaker, I think, spoke fairly eloquently and in detail on the status of energy transition. But what I would do is I don't have a presentation per se, but I thought I will speak at, in two parts. One is talk of the state or play of energy transition in India and walk you through a dashboard that we at Vasudha Foundation have put together with Niti Aayog, which I think Aditya also did allude to, and I did see that he showed snippets of that from that dashboard, but I will run you through the dashboard or elements of the dashboard. I was also asked to not just stick to India, but also cover South Asia. If that's so, Priyanka and others, I'd also like to show something that we have done around the South Asia in terms of the energy transition. Is my understanding correct, Priyanka, that you would like me to cover South Asia too? Priyanka and the IMPRI organizers?
Yes, sir.
You want me to cover South Asia too, right? If I'm not mistaken. Or do you want me to just stick to India?
No, sir, you can cover South Asia. It's fine.
Okay.
Sure,
Yeah.
sir.
Right. So, so if you are able to see my screen, is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah. So this is Aditya already sort of showed snippets from this, but this is a very comprehensive dashboard that Vasudha Foundation has put together with Niti Aayog, and it was launched very recently on the 20th of July, just about a month, slightly more than a month back. And the first demonstration of the site of the dashboard was also done at the sidelines of the Clean Energy Ministerial in Goa, which was held on the 21st of July. What it does is that it brings together comprehensive granular. Why? Why do we say it's granular? Granular because it not only gives you pan-India data, but also gives you data from the state level, from the district level, wherever appropriate, wherever data was available, and at the DISCOM level or the electricity utility level for certain parameters. And it brings together data from the entire energy value chain. It brings in, and to the energy value chain, it marries the climate and environment related data, the economy and demography related data. And more importantly, there are a lot of dashboards that are there today, but this dashboard also is near real time, which means that as of now, as on date, we have data covered up to the 31st of August, and we are on the 2nd of September. So we do have, there is a 48 to a 96 hours time lag, but that's about it. It is updated twice a week on the daily parameters, and the monthly and the annual parameters are updated as soon as the data is put out. And all the data is by and large Government of India data, pulled out from various sources and ministries. So so that way, and importantly, this is housed in the Government of India NIC server 2, NIC server 2. So there's also the question of the data security sort of being addressed. Now, with this background being having said, where are we? Where is India in terms of energy transition? So let's start off, look at the tracker that we've developed on the NDC. And if you we just covered the two important, and I'll just cover the two important sort of the indicators or targets that was set, so to speak. One is to reduce emission intensity of GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 levels, and the other one is 50% cumulative electric power from non-fossil fuel by 2030. If I look at the emission intensity, we are right now, if you look at the target of 45, as on 2015-16, we were at 24%. We understand that as on 2018, 2019, we are already 33%, 34%. And very soon, and by about 27, we should touch the 45%. So on this, we seem to be perfectly on track if you look at this. Now, if you look at the other one, which is a 50% cumulative electric power capacity, we are as on 23-24, as on date, as on 31st July, we are already 43.75%, inching to that 50% very soon, which I presume, or I believe we should be able to do it by the end of next year or sometime middle of next year, if not earlier. So why do I say that? Now, let's look at the RE, renewable energy progress. So if you look at the renewable energy progress, and let's take just one, let's take just solar. Solar in 2013-14 was as low as 2.63 gigawatts, and 2014 was as low as 3.74 gigawatts. And today, the cumulative solar is about 71.14, which is a combination of both utility scale solar as well as solar rooftop capacity. This site, it's iced.niti.gov.in, can be accessed by anyone. You can download any other files, both in JPEG format as well as in Excel format. Now, just in terms of the renewable energy, if you look at this, the installed capacity is about 177.74, which is a combination of solar, wind, biomass, small hydro, and of course, the large hydro. Now, why do I say that I did say here that we should touch 50% very soon? Why do I say that? Because if you look at the pipeline capacity, now the pipeline capacity comprises of projects that are on various stages of construction. So if you can click on this, you say solar under construction capacity, which should be done in the next few months, and those that have been bid for. If you look at that, if you look at both, you will see that the pipeline capacity is about 105.29, and solar is about 68, which is the pipeline, and then solar, which is in the 58. I'm sorry, my apologies. So you have the pipeline is about 105.29, and solar is about 68.20, which is a combination of both pipeline as well as the bid awarded. The bid awarded might take a little more time, but then you're looking at 36 gigawatts that should come in the next few months, maybe maximum year, because these are projects that are under construction. Similarly, with regard to hydro as well as wind, you can clearly see that we have made the distinction between those that are under construction. Now, so overall, from a generation side, and then if you and I'm looking at renewable energy, because when you look at non-fossil fuel, the only other addition is nuclear. Nuclear, while the government does expect to add 18 gigawatts, that progress has been pretty slow. So we think that just the renewable energy alone, the growth of it, which is pretty fast, and if you can see from here, which is almost zero solar to a huge quantum of solar here in 2023-24. We believe that this 50% cumulative power capacity from non-fossil fuel should be easily met in the next year itself, by 2024 itself, if not earlier, if not by the end of this year. Now, Aditya in his presentation did cover issues like challenges and so on, but overall, if you look at the power sector overview and you look at the generation, and if you look at the transmission, distribution, and the consumption, one of the biggest challenges, in addition to what has been covered in the previous presentation, is the growth of the demand in electricity. And if you actually look at the consumption of electricity, you do see that the consumption of electricity has been growing at a pretty fast pace, and so has been growing at a pretty fast pace. And so there's no reason why new power projects should not come online, because at the end of the day, it's the bottom line that is important. Now, when we talk of renewable energy, you say, you have the national picture, but let's look at the state pictures. How are states performing? Now, if you look at the top states, in terms of RE, what are the top states? Or if you actually look at capacity additions in the last few years, you will see that there's hardly any coal capacity addition in the last years, and bulk of the addition is just solar and wind and hydro. This graph sort of tells you the whole story as to how in 2015, 2016, the largest addition was coal, and now the addition of coal is almost negligible, just about a gigawatt odd. whereas bulk of the additions, power capacity additions, are in the other sectors. Now, how are states performing? Now, if you look at the top states, and both, and you can toggle between capacity and generation. You can just click the two. You will see where we are in terms of the generation. But the top, and I'll sort of look at just the capacity. You look at the Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and then being the top states in terms of the RE. The top states that are in the hydro are, of course, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and of course the Jammu, and then you also have Punjab and Himachal, which are the states that are hydro. The states that are rich in coal, Maharashtra, for example, has got a diversified. It's got both coal as well as it's one of the leaders in renewables. Similarly, Madhya Pradesh is also a state that has growing or expanding its portfolio to include renewables. And Uttar Pradesh very recently came up with the 2022 solar policy, which looks at adding 22 gigawatts of solar and a cumulative capacity of about 30 gigawatts, 26, 27 gigawatts of renewables to the grid by 2026, 27. And if that happens, Uttar Pradesh would also be somewhere in this top ranking states if they are able to do it. And since we are working very closely with the state government, Uttar Pradesh state government on scaling up renewables, we do believe that the state is likely to achieve the target of more or less, if not the entire 22, but at least around 20 gigawatts by 26, 27. It's on track. Now, one of the and generally when you people who track the power sector or the energy sector in India, the general perception is that fine, for renewables to grow, the biggest challenge, the biggest elephant in the room is not necessarily the finance, but it is the discoms, right? Generally, people who follow this believe that the discoms is the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed because of the hesitation of discoms to sort of in uptaking renewables, number one, and number two, more importantly, the payment delays by discoms to the power producers, which again is a major issue, and then three, discoms again not providing, especially for solar rooftop, not providing adequate facilities for residential and other, and particularly the large consumers, the industrial and commercial consumers, to install solar rooftop because they would lose the high-paying consumer base. They would lose a high base. But what we have is, yes, all that is true, but it's not that the discoms are not changing. So if I actually show you what we have here now, so if I go to the energy page, I go to the electricity, I go to the distribution page. Let me go to the distribution page. Sorry. Are people able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
So I'll go to a discom and let's choose a discom randomly. So let me say Bangalore, right? Like I said, you have information that's available even at the granular level, and say Bangalore, and apply filter. So here it tells me the changing portfolio of electricity purchase of the BESCOM, the Bangalore Electricity Supply Company, from coal. So if you see 2016-17 was coal heavy, and a very small, minuscule share of solar, which is just about 2.16%. And if I go to 2022-23, while the share of coal is still very high, but you can see that the share of solar has increased from 2.16 to 15.38%, with the consumer base and the demand also increasing. So and what one can also see from here is seeing how the purchase portfolios, fuel purchase, electricity purchase portfolios from various sources of electricity has changed over periods of time by different discoms. And you can choose any discom of your choice. We have covered all the 60, 70 odd discoms. You can choose them, and you can see for yourself how the changes. It also tells you where it buys the electricity from, and then at what price it buys it from. And you can see that the price of solar has decreased, while coal has remained steady or even increased in some cases. And so you can also compare it, how much is the BESCOM paying the Bellary Power Company, what's the total cost, what's the variable cost and fixed cost, and so on. So you can do it, plant-wise. And you can also you can also see how much it is purchasing from each of these power plants. So if you're looking at a portfolio change, then where would the change come from? One could give you this sort of a trend, and you can choose any discoms of your choice. So what I would like to show, the case in point here is that it's not that, while yes, the discoms continue to be the challenge for the in the energy or a renewable energy transition, but importantly, but they're also changing over periods of time because they realize that it makes sense. Now, energy goes beyond, and of course, like I said, I just showed you something on the electricity side, but you also have a lot of information on the dashboard that covers the energy side. So you can look at fuel and sources page, and then it tells you how the coal has shifted, the demand of coal has shifted, the price of coal, the international price of coal, how much do we import. You can get all that information. And very clearly, I think we are, as a country, what we have here from all the data. And if you a quick scan of the data shows that India is very clearly on a transition pathway. There is absolutely no reason for us to believe that we may not achieve the kind of targets set for ourselves. In fact, we will exceed the targets or achieve the targets well below time, before time. Now, one area that I would also like to cover, because that was covered by Dr. Aditya, is on the electric vehicles. So this dashboard also has what is called the analytics. Now, the analytics right now we've just pre-fed a few questions that mix and matches various parameters. So the idea is to mix and match some of the electricity, energy with the climate and environment. So for example, this question sort of looks at state-wise peak power demand versus temperature change. So if I click on this, I can look at how, and then any state of your choice. So let me say Uttar Pradesh. I can, and then I say 2022. So it then tells me the peak demand, the minimum temperature, maximum temperature, how that has changed over periods of time. So I could choose that, and it gives me that data for a period of time. I can just go in time, and then it tells me where we are. I can expand this, and then it tells me, or I can choose another state. Let's say I choose Tamil Nadu, and then I could get that across periods of time. So you can look at the temperature, and then what's the correlation between mean and so on. mean temperature. Similarly, I can look at crude oil prices versus imports. I can look at per capita GDP versus per capita electricity consumption. What's correlation? A shift in electrical vehicles. That's also another thing that would be of interest to people. And then you can look at the electric vehicle penetration. You can choose a state, and then you can sort of look at the broad category. You can look at a comparison of ICE versus electric vehicles. Obviously, now electric vehicles is much smaller in terms of the other vehicles, but then you can see that there is a shift in particularly the two-wheelers and three-wheelers category. So you can choose a state, and then I can just remove this. I can just say Bihar and Chhattisgarh. Just as a, you can just choose a state, and you can look at the changes here. How there's been a change in year-on-year sales and so on. There's a three-wheeler. You can see how there's a huge change in the electric three-wheelers. You can see that change here. And this also tells you, you can choose a year, you can choose a category of vehicles, unselect all. I can just say electric vehicles, and then it gives me the data here, right? So, yeah, now this is sort of where India is. Now, this is where India is. Now, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to just show you something which sort of gives you a picture on how the situation is in South Asia. Now, let me share my screen here and go to the South Asia. Now, this is another project of Vasudha Foundation that we are working with multiple partners, and we call it the Energy Transition Platform, which is for South Asia, which primarily this platform brings together energy practitioners from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And these are the various organizations that are part of this, the network. So it's supported by Handicap Stiftung, Vasudha Foundation from India, and you have all these various country partners. The idea here is to, again, look at how can countries learn from each other and the energy transition in the India energy transition journey. Now, if you look at the capacity again, fossil versus non-fossil fuel, this sort of, I hope my screen is visible. Please do let me know if by any chance my screen just blinks.
Sir, it's visible.
It's visible. So you can see that almost with the exception of Bangladesh, almost all the countries and Maldives, all the other countries are in a pathway where the share of non-fossil fuel is actually on the grow. So Nepal, Bhutan, of course, is 100% because it's largely hydro. Similarly with Nepal, Sri Lanka is a combination of hydro and now a little bit of solar. Pakistan is also hydro. India is one country that is really doing well in its energy mix, with almost all non-fossil fuel sources doing well. Now, Afghanistan, again, of late, it's largely hydro. Minus the hydro, it's diesel. Both Bangladesh is a lot of coal, a lot of diesel oil. And so similarly with Maldives, it's a lot of diesel and diesel oil. But both these countries are have ambitious plans to sort of increase their non-fossil fuel portfolio. And if you look at this, look at Sri Lanka, hydro, it's Sri Lanka, which sort of India, Sri Lanka are sort of the big players here. You look at renewable energy as a whole, India, and then this is coal. Again, you'd find India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. Bhutan, not much. It's basically buys power from India. And so similarly here, but it sells a lot of hydro to India. And nuclear, it's only India and Pakistan. So this sort of gives you a sense of where we are. What we have also done, and this sort of came in the chat, what are the advantages of energy transition? So what we also did was to cover the air quality index. So this sort of covers this. So this is another site. It's called the Energy Transition Platform.org, and this gives you a lot of information. So in short, I would say that South Asia is doing, with the exception of 1 or 2 countries, but that's largely because of the resource availability and cost factor. But most of the countries in the region are on the energy transition or the clean energy transition path very clearly. I will stop here for now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, sir. We do have a couple of questions. We have one question in the Q&A box from Devadyum Singh Sinwarji. Devadyumji, if you can unmute and ask, that is fine as well. Let me just check.
Okay, I saw his question and let me answer it. Devadyum, there are enough schemes at the both at the national level as well as at the state level for solar installations. So if you look at solar rooftop, there is I think for 2 kilowatt or up to a cap of 2 kilowatt, I think there's a 15,000 or 30,000 rupees kind of a subsidy that's given by the central government, and then you have something given by the state government as well. So I mean, because we are working very closely in UP, and we are also looking at solar rooftop as one area that we should be pushing. I am aware of the fact that we were able to. I mean, a lot of people were not aware of these schemes, and the fact that discoms are a little hesitant to provide with this net metering or that kind of provisioning for solar, but that's changing now. So I think what is required, and it's not a poor state or a rich state, I think what is required is basically a massive amount of awareness generation to the public for solar rooftop installation. In terms of utility scale solar, I think what is required is the availability of land. So if you actually look at states that are doing very well in solar, it's largely states where land is available in abundance. Rajasthan, for example, right? The entire desert region is full of, and then Karnataka in areas where the density of population is low. I think Bihar and other states where the density of population is pretty high, UP, having utility scale solar could be a challenge, but then having a floating solar or a canal top solar is not a problem. I don't think it has got anything to do with the rich or poorness of the state. I think it's just the awareness and a little bit of push that is required.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Just for the session's awareness, I would like to read out Devadyum sir's question. He had asked, which Srinivas sir had answered, was that how can we increase panel installation in poor states like Bihar, which receive ample amount of sunlight, but the potential for solar is being wasted there? So sir has already answered this question. Again, for the participants, I'd like to say you can also raise your hand and unmute and ask the question. You can write in the Q&A box or the chat box. Sir, we'll wait for a couple of minutes just so the participants can enter their questions.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
While people are typing their questions, please feel free to go through both the dashboards. If you have any questions, anything that you would like us to cover in the dashboard, do let us know. You can download the. It's very easy to download both the JPEG as well as the Excel sheets. So those of you who are into energy modeling or looking at forecasting kind of thing, you would find this extremely useful.
Yes, sir. Regarding that, I wanted to thank you for giving us a good layout of how to navigate these websites and portals, because often we do not know what areas to look at, and this is very helpful with regards to that. So I had one question. It is about could you expand on like just what do we mean when we say like we want a just transition? Like, is it in social terms that all these sections of the society should get like access to electricity, uh, and like just more on the concept of just transition, because it is something that is being spoken about a lot when it comes to energy sector. So if you could elaborate a bit on it.
So basically, the whole concept of just transition is primarily to sort of put it in very, very simple terms, ensuring that no one is left behind, or no community is left behind, or no person is left behind in the journey from where we are to a clean energy solutions. So this could cover coal to renewables. It could be IC engine to electric vehicles. It could be land use change patterns. It could be even something simple from your lead acid battery to your lithium ion battery shift and so on. So when you look at the entire value chain, whether it's coal to renewables, you're not just looking at coal-fired power plants, but you're looking at coal mining. And then you have a lot of cities that, towns that are only coal mine towns, and if those coal mines shut down, what will happen to the towns? You have a lot of people, you have the indirect labor there, transporters and so on and so forth, who are dependent on. You have people in the towns who run small businesses to cater to the township. So what's going to happen to all of them when you shut a town down? Because similarly, the IC, you're not looking at just the manufacturing of vehicles, right? Now, the big industries like the Toyotas of the world, or the Fords of the world, or the the Hyundais of the world would train their staff, would train their workforce to shift to. But what about the roadside mechanics who are used to repairing this? What about petrol pump, who are unskilled workforce? So how do you ensure that they, when you shut down something and you shift to something else, how do you ensure that they don't get left behind? Because one assumes that they do not have currently enough skills to shift to a new kind of a thing. So what is the kind of a skilling or reskilling or training that needs to be given to them? What are the kind of safety nets that you need to put in to ensure that they don't lose out in the transition? Similarly, you have the lead acid battery, right? You have one huge economy as a MSME sector where people, refurbish the old batteries, roadside mechanics who repair those batteries and so on. What happens to them when you look at the seed lithium ion? So, and then there's this whole land use change, you're looking at mining township closing, what happens when they shift, and so on. So a lot of people, the informal economy, the formal economy would somehow be taken care of. But what about the informal? So I think that's where the word just comes in. How do you ensure that you put in place safety nets to ensure that nobody is left behind in the transition journey? I hope that was clear.
Yes, sir, definitely. So I had another question about the so in India's setting India's goals for the net zero target by 2070, I think, or is it shifted to 2050? I'm not sure. I just wanted to 2070, yes. I wanted to confirm that that I think that so the hydropower projects are micro and macro in capacity, and so out of the two, micro are under the renewable category. Mm, if I'm not wrong, the micro hydropower is, I think, under the renewable cleaner energy category, and the macro ones are not. Like, I could be wrong. I could be, but I think this was it.
Well, so you have what is called as a large hydro and what you call as a small hydro.
Yes.
And then the large hydro typically is under the Ministry of Power, and the small hydro typically is in the MNRE. However, having said that, there is a gazette notification that also has brought all hydropower plants, irrespective of the size, irrespective of the megawatts, into renewable energy category. Though, of course, the authority for everything, legislation or anything on large hydro still with MOP, the Ministry of Power, and all the small hydro, etc., still with MNRE. But then everything hydro is now considered as renewables as per the Gazette notification of some time back.
So, but then, yes. So regarding this, I wanted to ask, like, but then this is what's on the paper, right? But are the larger hydropower projects actually renewable or not? That is my question. Like, because in the paper now we are saying it's all renewable, but is it are the larger ones actually renewable? It's because then it's just paperwork.
Okay, I mean, so now, look, perceptions vary, right? According to me, the major issues with the large hydro is the way it's being planned, the kind of rehabilitation required or not being done, the kind of impact it has on communities because of, changing of the river course and so on and so forth, drilling on mountains causing. So it's the way things are being done, which is a problem, but otherwise, I mean, especially if you look at the run of the river system, where your reservoirs are quite small. When you have large reservoirs, you do have methane emissions, right? And that methane emissions are not accounted for. So there is a GHG emission when you look at large reservoirs. But otherwise, in the run of the river system, typically it should be renewables. But in the sense that because it is a water, and water is considered to be perennial in that. So yes, I would say that. But of course, people will have different opinions. I mean, there are a lot of people who are opposed to large dams and large hydro systems also in the country and globally also. But again, it's a question like this: is nuclear really fossil fuel? Yes, it non-fossil fuel. Yes, it is non-fossil fuel. You want nuclear? That's a different issue. Some will say yes, we need it. Some will say no, we shouldn't go for it. But and people will have their views on that. But if Dr. Aditya has some other viewpoint on this, it'll be good to hear his views also.
Yeah, so I think sir have covered most of the things, aspects of, regarding the question that you had about renewables. I mean, considering hydropower, large hydropower as renewable projects. As rightly said, the scale of operation itself have certain associated challenges in it. Because the major objective is to reduce the emissions, right? But there are certain indirect emissions that happen because of the basically management or basically running of those hydropower plants at that much scale. So it might not be contributing directly, but there might be some indirect emissions which are associated with such kind of projects. And when the scale is large, so the emissions associated with that also increases in that particular scale. So that's why it might not be entirely renewable, but it's all about mostly about perception, that how you want to perceive that kind of project. So yeah, so this is one of the reasons. So there'll always be a dilemma whether to consider it as a renewable or not. But as rightly said, I think 2-3 years back that notification came from government that earlier it was like only the projects which are less than 25, I think, gigawatt. I think those projects were considered as renewable for hydro, but but now I think all the hydro projects, even the larger one, are being considered as renewables. Yeah.
But I just want to add one more perspective. I mean, I personally think that if well-planned, a hydropower plant is definitely good, because I don't. Okay, one thing is if you want to do, so we are looking at 450 gigawatts of renewables by 2030, and then going forward, our own analysis that. Vasudha's own analysis that we should be doing we should have at least 2,000 plus gigawatts of renewables by 2050. There are some people who even peg it at 3,000, 4,000 gigawatts by 2050, 2060, and so on. Now, no matter what you do, unless you have storage, right? Because of the intermittency of renewables, you're not going to shut down coal at all, or oil and gas. You need something, right? Because of the intermittency factor, unless you have storage coming on stream. Looking at just battery storage alone, yeah, despite the fact the cost of coming down may not really work, and so you do need pumped hydro storage. I believe, many of us in our organization believe that pumped storage could answer, particularly in certain areas, as long as there are no environmental damage, as long as you don't drill mountains and hills and all of that, right? But then the gravity kind of a thing should be required, because it's sort of that kind of a storage would be required. You would need a combination of both battery storage as well as a pumped hydro storage. So I would that way say that hydro will have its benefits, but again, it's a question of planning, and it's a question of where you do it. And again, when you talk of emissions, yes, even your solar, or lithium ion and all of that, in the manufacturing, there's some amount of emissions anyway there. So and someone was asking me the other day, I drive electric car. So, and I was, they were teasing me the other day saying, but you may be zero pollutant, but you're not zero carbon emissions, because you are anyway taking power from the coal, right? So.
Yes, sir. So regarding this, I had just one more question. It was about the community engagement when it comes to framing the policies for a just transition. So as you previously stated that we have to take care of not just the formal sector, but also the informal sector. So I believe because India is so diverse and there's so much strata amongst the people, so many people from different backgrounds, so much economic uncertainty, within the groups of people. How, like, where does one even start to bring community engagement and framing of policies? And do we have currently some kind of framework while we're transitioning to cleaner energies, to involve more and more people, like for taking feedbacks, and like just even if we talk about the installing solar panels in across like um bigger areas of land, and so like just land use if you're considering, then community, how does that role play? Something along those lines, sir.
I don't know if you are aware of Jharkhand has set up a Just Transition Task Force headed by a retired IFS officer, and it involves a couple of other NGOs like SEED and others. And I do believe that they have actually started the process of community engagement, looking at district level, block level, even panchayat level engagements that's happening. Is there a policy that sort of mandates that? I am not very sure of that. But I do know that there are a lot of groups, think tanks like iForest, who we work very closely with, and a lot of the other groups that have already started that process, bringing together the trade union, workforce, and so on, to discuss this and look at what pathways and roadmaps should be. There are think tanks that are developing roadmaps in consultation with the community members and the trade unions and others. But I'm not aware of if there's any policy directive on that. But that I'm not sure.
Thank you, sir. So we do not see any more questions that have been typed in. I'll give another minute. Participants, if you want to raise your hand and question, you can. Just another minute, sir, and then we can proceed with the formal vote of thanks, I guess. Okay, so sir, thank you so much for being with us here today, and thank you so much for actually introducing us with how to navigate these portals, and thank you for questioning our queries. And we hope that we can have you in the future at our IMPRI Web Talks as well. I sincerely thank you for being here with us today, and thank you to Dr. Aditya Gusain as well for being with us here today. It was a lovely session. Uh, as we have come to the end of day 5 of understanding the nuances of climate change in the Indian subcontinent, Impact and Way Forward, an online international Monsoon school program, a 6-week immersive online introductory certificate training course, which is organized by IMPRI. I, Priyanka Negi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute. I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the day 5 sessions, Dr. Aditya Gusain ji and Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy ji, for taking out their valuable time and for their thought-provoking insights on the topics. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for these sessions have been shared in your email, and the link shared by Mr. Srinivas sir will also be shared with you, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We look forward to welcoming you for our 6th and final day of the certification course on 9th of September at 3 p.m. The theme for day 6 is Just Transition to a Sustainable Planet, and the experts are Professor Sanjeevi Shantakumarji, Dr. Khondakar Ghulam Muzemji, and Mr. T.K. Arunji. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in the future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Srinivas sir. Thank you, Aditya ji. Thank you.